The predicate, in my view, for taking any action is whether pesticides pose a risk to public health. And this is what we've learned in that regard. We have learned that there are numerous scientific studies that show strong, quote, associations between pesticide exposures and disease. And at the same time, we have heard from the National Cancer Institute that there are no, quote, definitive causal connections. Now, our EPA uses this higher threshold, if you will, this causal link prior to banning a product. There are other jurisdictions, notably Ontario and certain provinces in Canada, that have chosen to use the lower threshold of associations as a basis to make public health decisions. The advocates of this legislation before us have urged us to use that association lower threshold and adopt the precautionary principle. And I agree. The evidence supporting action is strong enough, particularly given the recent conclusion of the International Agency for Research on Cancer, that has concluded that the active ingredient in one of the most popular pesticides, Roundup, is, quote, probably carcinogenic. So there is broad, but certainly not unanimous, agreement that additional steps should be taken in our county to protect public health. But what I've been grappling with for many, many months is how to chart the most responsible path to reduce pesticide use and to limit the exposure of children in particular. The advocates in the bill before us would ban the use of pesticides in our county. Homeowners would be prohibited from using pesticides on their lawns. Our Parks Department would be prohibited from using them on our playing fields. HOAs and other common ownership communities would be prohibited as well. After careful consideration, I don't believe adopting a ban at this time is responsible government. Why? We have heard from our Attorney General, a strong environmentalist, that a ban is, quote, likely to be found by a court to be unlawful. As a lawyer, I take that counsel seriously, and I don't recall ever voting for a significant piece of legislation when I've been told in advance that it is likely to be thrown out by the courts after an expensive court battle. We have been told by our Department of Environmental Protection that they have serious concerns about the enforceability of a ban. We have been told by our parks experts and others that if pesticides cannot be used at all on our playing fields, we will lose them. We have done virtually nothing in this realm for decades, and our existing regulations, as meager as they are, have not been enforced. A ban, in my judgment, would be akin to going from 0 to 60 in a nanosecond. We have not laid the proper foundation for a ban. And while the advocates have done a great job, and we have certainly heard from them, I believe a ban is way ahead of our public on this issue. Passing a ban on products used by much of our public, approved by national and state regulators, and readily available at stores without laying a strong foundation first will create a backlash that will erode trust in our government. So at the appropriate time this morning, I will be putting forth an alternative that I circulated earlier that, if accepted, would be the strongest anti-pesticide bill adopted by any major jurisdiction in the country. It sets a goal of a 50% reduction in 3 years and says if we don't get there, we would examine additional measures. It bans pesticides on county property. It bans it on 28 county playgrounds and tot lots and 1,600 acres of parkland. It requires HOCs and common ownership communities to actually allow everyone to vote on whether or not pesticides will be used in those communities, and an opt-out for those that don't want them. And it takes unprecedented steps to increase awareness of the risks of pesticides and the availability of alternatives among our homeowners using pesticides. In my view, this is the type of approach that builds awareness, builds trust, and makes significant reductions in the use of something that we should reduce.